This is part 4 of my Quintessential Breakdown of Quintessential Quintuplets, and it will be covering the last 4 episodes of Season 1 of the anime. If you haven't read the manga all the way through yet, I highly recommend doing that first, as there are massive spoilers for the end of the entire series in this video. Then after you're done reading the manga, go ahead and watch the first 3 parts of my Quintessential Breakdown series before watching this video. The Legend That Binds, the School Field Trip, the Bonfire Arc, whatever you call it, chapters 22 to 32 of the manga form one of the longest and most emotionally complex arcs in the entire series. Everyone is given moments to shine. Various arcs take dramatic turns. The conflicts are all character focused. There's tons of subtle nods to their deeper emotions, and its resolution is a game changer for Futaro and his growing relationship with the Quints. This was the perfect arc to end the first season of the anime. There's a sense of finality to the way things played out. At the beginning of the arc, he was just their tutor who would occasionally help them out of his own self-interest. By the end, they're all a little bit more than that. And that should be par for any arc in a rom-com manga. But to have that kind of complexity with 6 different characters, each with very different things driving them, that's no small feat. And it's no small feat to analyze it either. For that reason, the parts in this video will be categorical based on the characters, rather than chronological like the past 3 videos. Ichika might not be the most important character in this arc, but she has some of her most defining moments. This arc serves as a microcosm for her entire story throughout the series. She starts by teasing Miku about her feelings and why people date. She then urges Miku to cover for her, which creates a conflict between the 2 girls. Ichika's classmate Maida asks her out, but it's not actually Ichika, it's Miku. And the only way Miku can think of to let him down easily is to say she's already dating Futaro. This creates an issue. In order to keep Maida from hounding them, Ichika has to be the one to dance with Futaro. But she's all too aware of Miku's feelings to be comfortable with it, so she's conflicted throughout the arc. But as long as Miku is really okay with it, she'll be okay with it.
If it's Ichika, then I'm not worried. Miku says it's okay, so I guess it is.
She continues pulling for Miku during the quintuplet game, but has a harder time cucking herself the more she spends time with Futaro. The more time she spends with him, the more she wants to be his one and only. The guilt over those feelings starts to get to her, and it's this same mindset that would create conflict later in the series. The morning after their stay at the inn, she wakes up beside him and lingers over him, contemplating her own feelings. Itsuki sees Ichika even though she's obscured by the light, and this spurs Itsuki onto her own role in the arc. During the test of courage, she pairs off with Miku again, and unlike Nino, she instantly recognizes Futaro despite the blonde hair. She expresses worry for Futaro's antisocial lifestyle, and when she sees the concern on Miku's face, she even offers to switch places during the dance, which would actually be fair since it was technically Miku who said she was going to dance with Futaro. And they also note that they could easily switch places if they had wigs with them. She tries distancing herself with work like she does later on, which just puts her in more situations to be alone with Futaro. Again, just like her arc post-Sister War. And it's here she probably has her most defining moment. While helping Futaro, she acts like Nino and Itsuki to give him practice dealing with them. Then, when they start talking about the bonfire dance, Futaro asks if she'd rather call it quits. This is when Ichika realizes she hasn't come to grips with her own swelling heart. She was supposed to be doing this for Miku's sake. Miku's the one with the crush. She shouldn't get in the way. Yet, the thought of not dancing with Futaro brings tears to her eyes, and she's forced to wallow in her inner turmoil when they get locked in the shed. She tries to share the moment with Futaro. She wonders if he even noticed how much her emotions are getting the better of her. She even jokes about dropping out of school to fully pursue acting and doesn't get the reaction she was expecting. And here we get a little insight to Futaro's true motivations. Good grades are not the end. They are a means. For him, getting good grades means bettering his job prospects to support his family. Ichika doesn't need that.
It's worth a shot. Most things are.
If she could truly make her dreams come true, she doesn't need as much of an education. When it comes to her, Futaro wants her to do well so he can keep getting paid, and to give her other options just in case acting doesn't work out. He might not see himself as more than a tutor yet, but he understands Ichika enough. He knows what it's like to chase a goal with reckless abandon. That's why he and Ichika get along so well. They both know the risk and rewards to achieving their goals and the sacrifices they have to make. Futaro sacrificed his social life. Ichika is willing to sacrifice her grades. And slowly, over the next several arcs, she'll be willing to sacrifice her relationship with her sisters in order to get what she wants. But for the time being, she's content to just dance with Futaro and share one of the most intimate moments in the entire series. Even if she does have to constantly chastise him for not knowing how to talk to girls. The real guilt comes when Futaro explains the legend to her, a legend Miku knew about but Ichika didn't.
She wanted this so badly, and I took it away.
Because of these moments, she does get in trouble with Itsuki, and then catches the same fever Futaro had. But during the bonfire itself, she once again stays with Miku, where they share each other's feelings and come to grips with the fact that they're both in love with him. As the arc draws to a close, she visits Futaro along with her sisters. She laments not noticing how sick he was sooner, and how her own narrow-mindedness caused more trouble, and as all the girls reach for his hand, she's content with grabbing his thumb. Nino's arc is nothing short of amazing. When you take a step back and view the series as a whole, her story becomes one of letting go of the past. I've said before that she doesn't hate Futaro. She hates the idea of Futaro. He's an outsider who has the gall to try changing her sisters in any way. She is the only one still clinging to the idea that all she and her sisters need is each other. They don't need Maruo, and they certainly don't need Futaro. And every detail of her character hammers in this point, from her bunny phone to her hair being the most identical to how they were when they were young. Up to this point, she's merely tolerated Futaro's presence for her sister's sake. She's seen Miku, Yotsuba, and Ichika fully accept his help, and has even taken note that Itsuki is going through a similar change in heart. And she clings to her own disdain and lets it fester until it all comes to a boil later on. Here, though, she gets a taste of what her sisters feel. And that taste is what will ultimately lead to her redemption and her role throughout the second half of the manga. In the lead up to the trip itself, she and Itsuki set themselves apart from the other three, and she sets herself apart again by being the only one who takes the shopping trip seriously. When they pick up Futaro, she sees the picture again, and in an unusual display of empathy, she tells him to be more careful with it, possibly because of her own feelings towards her sisters in her past. She also reaffirms that blondes are her type, and even adds that she swears she's seen the boy in the picture before, which is partially a red herring, but we do later find out that she did see him for a bit back then. She is unique in this arc as none of her goals involve Futaro. All of her sisters have plans for the boy, which in a strange way makes her the most considerate one. She is also the first to notice that something is going on with him, and though she doesn't pay it any mind, she does show that she cares a little bit, which is why she shows up at the end of the arc. But I think that has less to do with any growing feelings towards him and more to do with general respect and willingness to be polite. This is the first arc where we really get to see Nino's good side, and that's probably because this is the first time Futaro isn't actively disrupting what she sees as her dream life. Yeah, he's here and interacting with her sisters, but they're just interacting as classmates alongside everyone else. Not only that, but he's more the victim here. I think she sees that, or at least she does by the end. Not that she's warm to him. She is still crude to him on the car ride and gets really defensive when they're forced to stay in the same room. She's the first to call out the absurdity of sleeping in the same room with the boy, and when Itsuki says that's why she should sleep next to him, she deflects to Ichika, which just makes her heart swell all that much more. During the activities, she actually manages to hold down the fort. She's a good cook and picks up a lot of slack being made by some of the more incompetent people in her class. And during the test of courage, she pairs up with Itsuki and has to basically baby her because Itsuki just has no nerves to deal with walking through a forest. Itsuki freaks out and the two get separated. Nino then gets lost and runs into Futaro, only she doesn't realize it's Futaro. She has no love in her heart for the boy, and so in the low lighting, she fails to recognize Futaro while he's wearing the blonde wig from his clown getup. And so she mistakes him for the boy in the picture, which she's right, but that's kinda on Futaro for lying to her about that in the first place.
She thinks I'm the guy in the photo. I mean, I am, but she doesn't know that.
Imagine how different things would have played out if he had told her the truth about that picture. And Futaro, never one to let a good lie go to waste, creates the Kintaro persona. He keeps playing this part and uses it to possibly get more insight on Nino and how he should go about approaching her. He also tries to make himself undesirable, which backfires because she prefers bad boys over stick in the muds like Futaro, which is actually a good measuring stick for her art. She's still a child, more so than any of her sisters. Yes, even more than Yotsuba, who wears kitty underwear but desperately wants to be seen as an adult. As she matures, she stops having such fanciful views on romance and begins falling more in love with the strong, dependable, and well-educated guys like Futaro. Running through the woods can be dangerous and they nearly fall off a cliff, saved only by the lucky charm Raiha had given to Futaro. He gives her the charm as a token of gratitude and then has to bail as Itsuki approaches, but not before Nino asks him to dance with her at the bonfire, which complicates things since Futaro is supposed to be dancing with Ichika at that time. She spends the next chunk of the arc on Cloud 9 crushing on Futaro's alter ego, which I can't help but think is some kind of reference to Sailor Moon in Tuxedo Mask. I mean, she's not even one of the girls that catches Futaro in a compromising position for once. I don't even think she ever finds out about his and Ichika's alone time in the shed. She mistakes Futaro for Kintaro while skiing because the band-aid she gave him fell off, which that's just an oversight on his part. What if she caught Futaro himself wearing the band-aid? Unsurprisingly, she does freak out when Itsuki goes missing, and this is where we see the biggest change in her feelings towards Futaro. She actually trusts him, albeit reluctantly, but he's pulled through in these situations before, so she puts it in his hands. And he extends that gratitude after he falls into illness by entrusting part of the truth to her. Kintaro isn't coming, which is true. And he can't come because Futaro can't come either. She's a little heartbroken by it, but still thinks it's because something actually came up. If Kintaro really just didn't want to see her, he wouldn't have given that information to Futaro to let her down easily. She actually takes pity on Futaro, who pushed himself so far to appease these girls despite them, mostly Itsuki in this case, being a pain in the ass. And she lends him the charm that was given to her, bringing it full circle. And when the charm comes back in the future Flash, it's a possible hint or red herring to Nino's victory, but more accurately now, it's a symbol of how the Bonfire legend really did bring all 5 girls closer to Futaro, as much as Nino hates to admit it as she holds his index finger. Miku has a lot to do in this arc. Looking at all this panel time, I'm beginning to regret the daunting task I've set for myself. The arc starts out with Miku joining in conversation with Yotsuba and Futaro. Upon hearing about the binding legend of the Bonfire dance, she asks a question that'll stick with her for the rest of the arc.
Wait, why do we date people we like anyway?
See, she hasn't quite come to grasp with her own feelings. She knows they're there, but with nothing to really compare it to, she doesn't know what those feelings mean. The Quints had only gone to all-girls schools up to this point. Their main source of social interactions had been girls' soccer teams. Futaro is the first guy friend any of them have had, and so it's hard to quantify this feeling. All they have to go off is stories after all. So not only does Miku not really know what love means, but she also doesn't know what to do if it is love. She's meek. She doesn't see herself as any better or worthy as her sisters, so she still tries to approach Futaro as if all 5 of them are equal, which they are not, but more on that later. The point of conflict is one of her own making. As stated earlier, she covers for Ichika, and creates a situation where Ichika has to dance with Futaro in order to keep Maida off their back. But she does this fully aware of the binding legend and the implications this would have for their relationship. One can even make the argument that this was a Freudian slip, where she temporarily dropped the guise of Ichika to express what she really wanted to do with Futaro. She doesn't do much else in the lead up to the trip itself, aside from getting her sense of men's fashion from her historical-centered video games, which is a really cute detail, honestly. She has no idea what boys are actually like. She does put her faith in Ichika though, which pays off fine here, but breaks my heart when Ichika betrays that trust later on. When they take a bath, there's a funny ecchi style gag that actually shows a bit of Miku's perception of her position as a quint. She denies having bigger boobs because they're all quintuplets. They're all the same, they haven't physically changed from each other. She is wrong in that assessment, which is a lesson she learns later in the arc. She's also the one who proposes they sleep with Futaro in the middle, which just brings him and Ichika closer together, and is also another Freudian slip. See, this is why I love the fan service in this series. It's used sparingly, and every time there is an ecchi-style gag, it's actually used to further the character dynamics in their own perpetual arcs. While making food, she has absolutely no idea what she's doing. And during the test of courage, she pairs off with Ichika, but isn't all that scared since she saw Futaro prepping and kinda knew what to expect. But seeing him and Ichika talk and feeling that jealousy cloud her senses, she begins to think there's something wrong with her. Ichika offers to switch places with her again, which just doesn't sit well with her, and it creates more turmoil when she sees them soaking wet and alone in the shed. She continues struggling with these feelings while skiing with him and Yotsuba, and then this all comes to a head in one of my favorite moments in the series. She finally gets what she wants. Some alone time with Futaro. They both hide from Yotsuba and Nino, and though it's cramped in the igloo, she likes it. To make the game of tag more fun, she wants to give Yotsuba a handicap. And even though that would help her chances, Futaro's not on board with it. They are quintuplets. They all started from the same position. Miku is the least athletic because she didn't work at all. Yotsuba is the most athletic because she worked her ass off to get this way. Giving her a handicap would be a betrayal of Futaro's role as their teacher and a disservice to all the effort Yotsuba has given. It's better to be fair than equal. And what's fair is the person who put in the work gets the prize. This is the inspiration that leads Miku down the path she walks for the rest of the series. From this point onward, she tries becoming the kind of person Futaro would fall for.
What kind of girls do you like, Futaro?
I guess I can teach you my criteria. Behold, I have a top 3.
She picks up cooking,
Good at cooking.
tries to find things she's more confident in,
Always cheerful.
starts to share her interests with her sisters, and in the short term acknowledges that Futaro has 2 hands. Both she and Ichika have put in the work to be with Futaro. This is something they both want, and he has 2 hands. They've both earned it, and they can share it. So that's a fair course of action. And I can't stress enough how important it is to be fair rather than equal. There is no such thing as truly equal. Every single one of us is different. We all put in different amounts of effort and have different attitudes about that effort, and we should be rewarded as such. Of course, Futaro's health bottoms out before she gets a chance to reap that reward, but she does spend more time with Ichika, where she promises to do her best, and with as much confidence as she can muster declares that she won't lose. And it's this small wave of confidence that brings her to Futaro's room, where she holds his middle finger. Alright, so you know movie twists? I mean the really big, important, game-changing twists that stick in the public psyche and completely change what the movie is about upon repeated viewings. Take for instance, The Sixth Sense. Oh, spoilers for a 20-year-old movie, I guess. First time watching, you're thinking The Sixth Sense is a movie about Bruce Willis helping Haley Joel Osment with his mental problems and guiding him to use his supernatural powers for good. Psych, the movie is actually about Haley Joel Osment helping Bruce Willis come to grips with the fact that he's been dead the entire film. That's basically Yotsuba throughout the series and especially in this arc. Oh, you think this is a story about a Genki girl who just likes to help people and decides to help Futaro because it'll be fun? Psych, it's actually a story about a deeply self-tormented girl trying to atone for her broken promises by supporting Futaro in any way she can in order to give him a good time and help him make memories before she's forced to admit she'll never be good enough for him. That's the power of the twist that comes with Yotsuba's backstory reveal. She's the one who tries lightening things up when they go shopping. She's the one who offers to help Futaro with his work, even as Miku and Ichika stand there and don't. She's the one who first brings up the binding legend. She's the one who promises to spend time with Futaro. She's the one whose goal is to create memories for him. She's the one who vouches for him at the end. She's the one who pairs off with him during the test of courage. She's the one who keeps helping him move stuff around. She even turns the table on him by teaching him how to ski and quickly puts him to the test. And as she tends to do, she blames herself for Futaro's failing health afterwards. She lingers on his guidebook, looking at all the little notes and tabs he had put in it. This is our very first look at the self-inflicted torment Yotsuba has been putting herself through ever since she flunked out of their previous school. And it serves as a microcosm for things to come when Itsuki is the one who showed his notebook. It is filled to the brim with stories to tell Raiha, and so many of them involve Yotsuba. She did succeed, far more than any other girl. She helped him make memories that will stay with him for the rest of his life. That's why in hindsight, this arc takes on a whole new meaning with the way things have played out. Not just with Yotsuba's true feelings getting revealed, but also with Futaro's own interpretation of events, both in the wedding flash forward at the end of this arc, and what happens at the end of the last festival arc. They were all by his side by the end, but Yotsuba is the one who was always by his side, and she's the one who held the finger where his wedding ring would go. This is the last arc where Itsuki plays any kind of antagonistic role for Futaro, and that's something I don't see people talking about. Sure, she was never as antagonistic as Nino, but she wasn't ever helpful either. Even during the midterms when she apologized, she was still a little self-righteous about it.
This is for Raiha's sake. No more, no less.
But her goal throughout the arc is to test Futaro. Why? Well, there's a couple different things at play, but it really just boils down to daddy issues. See, Itsuki here is especially torn up about their lack of a consistent male parental figure. As mentioned before, she has no grasp on what guy friends are supposed to be like, act like, sound like, or even look like. When Yotsuba says the shopping trip is like a date, Itsuki starts talking the same way Futaro does, highlighting just how similar they are. Which is a comparison Yotsuba makes, and a comparison Itsuki takes offense to. And then in the end, she sees Ichika lingering over his sleeping body. She begins noticing Ichika's growing affection for Futaro, which makes her more determined to test him. They have to be careful about choosing the men in their lives. They wouldn't want a selfish, know-it-all bastard like their biological father, or an aloof and distant neglectful man like Maruo Nakano.
I think with men, we need to be way more selective than that.
And Ichika assures Itsuki that Futaro will pass the test.
Don't worry. Futaro isn't like our dad, okay?
All the Itsuki moments, aside from maybe her trying to be a by-the-books cook and freaking out during the test of courage, leads to her role during the skiing part of the arc. She disguises herself as Ichika, who is actually sick in bed with a fever she caught from Futaro. With the aid of a mask, she even manages to fool her sisters into thinking she's Ichika, which causes concern when nobody can find Itsuki. But Futaro does. Even with his plummeting mental faculties, he's able to pick up on something, gets Itsuki alone, and reveals that he knows it's her. See, he might not know them all that well. Certainly not as individuals, but he has picked up on a few things. They have different handwriting, study habits, and each girl has a different way of addressing him. That's how he was able to determine that it was Itsuki and not Ichika. With that notion, he manages to pass her test. He is capable of telling them apart if they give him clues. He is capable of noticing all their individual quirks. Even though none of the girls know this yet, he's already better than their biological father in that regard. Itsuki doesn't get the chance to congratulate him before his health finally gives out, and she has to drag him back. But with this, she realizes just how strange Futaro was. Even while suffering from a fever, he tried his best to have fun and do what the girls wanted him to do. Even on the verge of collapse, he still took the time to pass Itsuki's test. And unlike the fireworks festival, there was no ulterior motive to helping them. If he actually cared about himself as Itsuki thought, he would have locked himself in the room and not gone out in the snow. This is why Itsuki sneaks in to visit him. She's the first to reach for his hand but settles for his pinky, a symbol of a new promise. She pledges to find out more about Futaro and tell him more about herself. This is the point when she truly accepts him as their tutor, and opens up the possibility of becoming more than that. Becoming a friend. So I find it fitting this promise, more than any of the others, is the one that is kept. Itsuki does become privy to more of his internal thoughts than any of the other girls. She does learn more about him and does become the one that tells him more about their family. And it's those promises made to his sleeping Futaro that set the stage for the next several arcs. If there's someone who gets the short end of the stick, it's Futaro, which just further highlights how impressive this arc is. Saying Futaro gets less development is a relative statement. He still drives the plot. He's still an active protagonist. He spends the entire arc bouncing back and forth between different girls and helping them in whatever small way he can. And in the lead up to the arc, we also see him caring for Raiha. He has no real desire to go on the trip and would rather be useful. In fact, if not for Raiha wanting him to make some memories for her, he likely wouldn't have come, even as Itsuki comes, to drag him out of the house. The most he changes is really just a showcase of the development he had before. He started to pick up on their vocal tics, at least as far as how they address him, But his deal this arc doesn't really get tied up. It's not until chapter 34 that he recovers from his fever, not until chapter 35 that he follows up on what he wrote in his journal, and not until the wedding years later that he thanks them for staying by his side that final night. And that is the crux of his arc here. He runs himself ragged and miserable fighting a fever in order to appease these girls. Yet, even though he has nothing resembling a genuinely good time, he can't help but think fondly of it. Years later, it's these moments he's reflecting on. He wears the charm as a symbol of him entering the Nakano family and as a symbol of the binding legend that brought them all closer together. After all, the one who first brought up the legend, the one who was the most determined to give Futaro a good time, the one who tried her damnedest to help him out, the one he wrote about the most in his journal, and the one that grabbed his ring finger, the one he ultimately chose was Yotsuba. And that's the new perspective the manga's ending has made on this arc. It's no longer a part of each individual's journey. It's about all 6 of them getting one step closer to becoming a family. It's about Ichika and Miku accepting their own feelings, Yotsuba and Itsuki finding ways to express theirs, and Nino getting one step closer to accepting Futaro as more than just her family's tutor. And this is the bind that they're in from this day forward. Having each of them grab his fingers wasn't just a cheap way to keep things going and perpetuate the mystery aspect. It was symbolic of all 6 of them coming together, because no matter what happens, these characters are now bound together by fate. Only one can be the bride, but they are all family. And in that regard, they all win. And this is the first arc to explore that possibility. And that's why I absolutely love this arc and so many of the following arcs, where these character beats come back into play. This concludes part 4 of my quintessential breakdown of Quintessential Quintuplets.